Hey everybody, welcome to What the Flick. Exciting day here. We have some special guests. Jason from Pop Trigger is joining me to welcome the creator of Netflix's Dear White People, Justin Simien, and one of the show's stars, Logan Browning, is here. Welcome. So,
that's a round of applause.
Congratulations, the show is extraordinary. If y'all have not started watching this thing yet, it's 10 half hours of your life that will change everything. You gotta get on this right now.
No pressure.
None. Justin, how did Dear White People the movie become Dear White People the show?
Oh man. I was, working on a bunch of projects, per usual, just always kind of like keeping stuff in the oven. And this was one of those things that in the back of my mind, I felt like I had more stories to tell with these characters. And I had been on tour with the movie, at colleges, around the world talking to people. And I just, at the end of this process, I just had so much more to say. And so, we had kind of an initial meeting with Lionsgate, who owns the property. And they asked me, well, have you been thinking, what would you want to do if it was hypothetically a TV show? And I was like, well, I'm glad you asked. I brought a PowerPoint. And
funny you should bring that.
I believe there was a PowerPoint. And we just went from there, really. We, took it out. It was bidded on aggressively, and we ended up at Netflix.
Right.
So, yeah.
So now, Logan, you're stepping into a role that was previously played by somebody else, but you have clearly made it your own thing. Was it intimidating, and what were the steps involved to sort of put your own brand on Sam White?
It was very intimidating, but also really exciting because I love the film. I love Tessa in the film, and I could see myself in her and in Sam. So to have the opportunity to take this role and to experience it however that was going to happen was daunting and also exciting. And the first step I took was to read the screenplay of the film, because I know a lot of things get lost from page to screen sometimes, and reading Justin's stage direction was going, and some of his little nuanced things about Sam was going to give me more of a idea about her. And then just looking to Justin, and he was saying, watch the network. The network kind of has the cadence of the show, and then not watching the movie too much, because I was tempted to obsess over it,
Justin, first of all, like I was telling you off camera, this show got so many things so right.
Oh, good.
So many things so right, from all of the puns, the lingo, the conversation that these young adults use is just so on the money. How important was it for you guys to tell this story and be factual with how young African American youth communicate today? Because words like woke, for some people who don't know what woke means, that's not a term that a lot of people are throwing around. And I know, Logan, you did a recent interview with Paper Magazine. You said that you have a love-hate relationship with the word woke, but why was it so important to make sure these stories were on the mark?
Well, I'm a firm believer that when you are as specific as you can be about some aspect of the human condition, it becomes universal. So I think that when you try to make it for everybody from jump, it doesn't really hit anybody's heart. And I watch shows like Girls. I've talked about Blue is the Warmest Color. It was one of my favorite movies of that year. I can't relate to any of those specific experiences. I don't happen to be a white French lesbian. However, because they're so specific and they were so honest about being in those characters' skins, I could relate to their humanity. And my number one objective is for, no matter where you come from on the ideological perspective or whatever race or age you are, I wanted you to feel the humanity of these characters. That was my number one goal.
Absolutely, because not only I felt watching the show, and I watched it twice to make sure I was in it, because it was just so, like I said, so many things were on the money. Defamation. Hello. You had said, come on. In a recent interview with Entertainment Weekly, you said that this is watching shows and getting together and parties like that is a cornerstone.
That's what we do.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
And talking to the screen no, she didn't.
Yeah.
Whoa. It was really cool. But I think that Dear White People is also a coming of age story for a lot of youth, that, with the whole Lionel storyline of him being gay and finally saying, hey, I'm gay, and was that a personal story for you?
Oh God, yeah. I never came out in the midst of having my hair cut by Black Superman or something, but it was a struggle, because my version of being a gay Black male just was not in the culture anywhere. I couldn't look to any TV show or movie and see a version of how to do it. So it was an awkward experience, and I didn't know. I had no one in my life to tell me how to do this, and and sort of like portraying the awkwardness of that for Lionel was really important to me, because I know that there are kids out there who are Lionel and who need that in the culture. They need to be reflected in that way. And also for the rest of us, again, telling the truth about these characters makes you consider experiences that you never really considered before. And I think that that's honestly the most enjoyable thing about watching a TV show for me personally. So that's what I wanted to just imbue the show with.
To add to Lionel's story, what I really appreciated about the storytelling was that you showed Troy and his reaction to Lionel. I feel like that's really important, especially for young black men, to see how to react to, so this someone coming out and sharing with you. It was amazing.
The scandal parodies are great, but just remember, Boo! A Medea Halloween started as a joke in top 5, and then it became a real thing.
It's true.
Be careful what you satirize.
Well, there were a number of false movies that we talk about in episode 5 too, and we went even further in the script. So yeah, I know. It all is gonna become a documentary at some point. So it's fine. I'll take it.
What kind of guidance were you getting as far as, because you were working from the movie and I think kind of keeping the tone of the movie, were there a lot of notes from anybody, or was it pretty much like you already knew where you were going and everybody was comfortable with where that was gonna be?
I mean, there's always a lot of notes. I don't know what version of filmmaker or career success I would have to reach to not have a lot of notes. But there was also a lot of confidence in the overall vision for the show, both from Lionsgate and Netflix. And I think everyone just wanted to make sure we stuck the landing. It was sort of like we knew that we were walking a kind of tonal tightrope, and we also knew that like we were trying to pull this trick off where if you'd seen the movie, you didn't feel like you were repeating anything, but if you hadn't seen the movie, you could also pick up, right at the top of the show. So these were difficult things that we talked a lot about, making sure that it was working. So yeah, I mean, that was really the thrust of all of those notes. But the cool thing about doing a show for Netflix is that the notes are all about story and character. It's really, you don't get those notes about audience or offending this or that sensibility or what the advertiser might say. The notes really are about story, and as a storyteller, that's something I appreciated.
I appreciated a lot. One of the things I did appreciate in the show was your relationship with Gabe. Because like I said, this show touched on so many things that are so relevant today, interracial relationships. And not only did it touch on the divisiveness with African Americans and non-African Americans, but also the hierarchy within the black community of light skinned, dark skinned, which really blew my mind. Coco's story.
Yeah.
I had to sit down and think, okay, whose story really resonated with me? I mean, they all did, but the most was Coco's and Lionel's story. But also Sam's interracial relationship with Gabe and how he tried to insert himself, if you will, into that community only to be, in a sense, shunned.
Yeah.
It was that was probably some of the most powerful content in the show for me.
I mean, I totally agree in terms of like those characters resonating. You see them in the early episodes, especially Coco. You see her in the early episode and people think she's a villain.
Right.
And then you get to understand like really how she became who she is. The thing about Sam that's so interesting is she's this biracial woman who, relates to being black, is black, and dating a white guy. I was thinking literally last night about the party. So the party scene with Reggie. As Sam, I was watching Reggie thinking, she sees herself in him. This is a dangerous moment, but wow, she sees her father in this cop. Like she's literally split between a life of a history, genetic makeup of over 200 years of guilt and over 200 years of rage. Like she has that crack in her, and she's,
right.
Where does she fit? I mean, I'm still figuring that stuff out.
Yeah.
Logan, oh my gosh, you're right, because when she first meets Reggie in class, when she answers the question, and then also her exchange with Coco, I agree with you. Coco, we thought she was gonna be a villain because she's fly, beautiful. She has a very pointed tone with everything. Her stare is just so on the money. So we think, great. Here we have this over the top, bougie, if you will. Let's just use like what they would say, bad bitch, who underneath it all is one of the most complex characters. But then Sam too, that she's trying to figure out. Well, listen, I'm over here on the front lines, going to bat for the African American, but yet I'm not accepted because I have a little cream in me.
Yeah, she has to confront being black enough.
Right.
I mean, the thing is too is I really wanted you to come up with all of these prejudices for the characters that you haven't really gotten to know yet, because that is kind of the experience of being a part of a marginalized community. You are seen you're kind of like locked into this one way of being in other people's minds, and it isn't until you kind of make the effort to see what's under that surface that you realize there's a human being there that's at the intersections of many things, not just race and not just gender, but many things. And there's characters that haven't had their own episodes yet that you think you know, but you don't know. and to me, that's pretty thrilling.
No, it's interesting to look at the show in the context of 13 Reasons Why, which premiered a couple weeks earlier on Netflix. I mean, they're totally different, but in a sense, each episode you're getting to know a new character, or at least you're getting to know more about a character that you've seen kind of in passing. And you're right, every time it's that moment of like, oh, okay, I thought I knew this, this, and this, but as it turns out, there are layers, there are levels. I'm gonna find out more stuff. What I love so much about this show and about most things that, if it's films or TV that come from an experience that isn't mine, is that I feel like I get to eavesdrop on the conversations that are happening when I'm not around, you know? So like, I feel like I've been privy to this sort of internal conversation about blackness and black issues and black attitudes toward the culture and towards politics, whatever, that I don't usually get to sit in on. And so that's it's an illuminating experience.
Well, I echo that, Alonso, because touching back on the term woke, and you had mentioned about your blackness. We being African American, and I'm sorry not to just make this an African American conversation, but within the context of the show, there have been times where I'm sure we've been as a gay black man, I have been told I'm not black enough for whatever reason. So people are interpreting this term woke as being your consciousness of how black you are. Am I wrong in that?
I think it is, but like everything, like these terms get codified into very hard, unyielding, specific meanings, and that just is never appropriate for any human being. And appropriate, I don't mean as, let's not say the word, I just mean like no one can really be defined by a word like that. So, woke it's already kind of becoming this, it's already kind of being weaponized. Like, like
are you not?
Yeah, are you not woke? It's sort of, what does that mean exactly? Like in which ways are you woke? There are people who would consider themselves woke that I would vehemently disagree with their take on all of this stuff.
You get to be woker than that.
And is woke only with a specific social injustice, or is woke, what are the different other avenues you can be woke in? I mean, to me, it's being enlightened. And in my personal experience and opinion, one is not enlightened and that's it. You're constantly building.
There's constant layers and levels to it, and but I think it's also really, I think language is really fun, and specifically, in the black community, we play with language a lot. The new term that I personally love all the time is like, oh, she's in the sunken place. It's just like,
what does that mean?
Well, just coming from the movie Get Out, a black person who is somehow unwillingly or unconsciously supporting their own oppression, that black person is in the sunken place, But I could also easily see that in the next few months becoming, that's just something you throw out at someone you disagree with. So I don't know, this stuff is fun to me, and I think because the show is about identity versus self, like giving these characters language that they use and then misuse and changes over time, it has everything to do with what the show's about. And it doesn't matter that, in 5 years, we may not even know what this stuff means anymore, because it's about the way these kids try on different identities and different styles of being.
Now, of course, everyone who comments at What the Flick is genuine and intelligent and open to honest and polite conversation. But I understand there were some people on the internet who maybe had opinions about the show without even having seen it, which I just find shocking. Yes, on the internet, what?
I've never encountered that before.
Impossible.
I mean, I think people expect that a show called Dear White People, and not all people, but a good number of people expect that this is going to be like, some kind of finger wagging or somehow we're going to be blaming white people throughout the course of 10 episodes, which I personally think would be a really boring show. Really the core question that these characters have is the same question that these trolls have, which is like, is something called Dear White People racist? And if not, why not? And if so, why? I mean, these are the questions that the characters are grappling with themselves. So, to these people who keep sending me really obscene racist stuff, I would say just freaking watch the show. Like, it takes 30 minutes to watch the first episode, I kind of feel like you'll probably hear your own opinion out of some character's mouth.
That's the genius behind the show, because I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where there was not a lot of African Americans. So my view of, until I moved out of Albuquerque, my view of the African American community was watching Martin, was watching A Living Color, was watching these things. Now, when I was watching Dear White People, one of the things that really was, again, on the mark was how you were able to get the pun in, be direct in the stereotype that we're trying to convey, but not take away from the buoyancy of the character.
Right.
It immediately switched back to intelligent conversation, and which was really cool. Now, I want to ask you, were you apprehensive with using the word nigga?
I wasn't, because again, I don't ever see like creating a television show or doing stories as sort of like my pulpit to like, this is exactly how I talk and exactly what I think. I'm portraying characters, and it would be dumb to put a bunch of young black people on the screen and call myself being honest about it if they didn't use this word. I mean, come on, like that's just, I think that there's, because it is a TV show and it is a heightened reality, there's some things that are not there that are part of everyone's everyday experience, but that's one of those things. Like that is a word that we use and that we have conflicts about and don't always agree with each other about. And I think particularly because of the history of that word and what this show purports to be about, that's a conversation that we can't shy away from. That would just be kind of silly.
Even with Lionel, the moment when he's about to say Detroit, he walks in and he's like, yeah,
too much.
No, it's not gonna happen today.
Because there's a lot. I mean, we all know, like, it's an awkward word for some of us. Like, it rolls more trippingly off the tongue for some of us than others.
With the head, like, yeah, I feel you.
I'm sorry, that was too far.
I get to say faggot, but even then I have to decide when and where.
Yeah, it's time and place for everything.
Absolutely.
Logan, we previously had seen you as Yelena Howard on Hit the Floor, and then I read an interview that when preparing for this role, I mean, you really wanted to play Sam. What were some of the things you did to get into character to really embody that the character of Samantha?
Yeah, that's so funny you bring that up, because I didn't want to play Yelena. I wanted to play the sweet girl. I wanted to play Asha. And it's funny, I learned that Yelena was a character I would eventually love. And with Sam, I mean, the words, it was really the words that I started to fall in love with first. And the truth of the matter is, I feel like I'm gonna have a similar experience where as seasons go on, I'm gonna fall in love with this person more because I'll start to understand her more myself. Like, I'm still on like the surface layers, like trying to like, pulling back pages and parts of her, trying to really understand and make her like complex for myself. So and to be, oh my gosh, to represent someone like me on a screen. Like, I feel like I am this person who wants to have this voice, and I want to use it well and enlighten my community. It's cool to have people see themselves on screen like that.
This seems like a character that comes with a reading list.
It does. And the reading list comes from a lot of stalking Justin's interviews.
Can we talk about casting as far as, because I mean, I have to say, and I think the internet agrees, you have some of the most beautiful people are in this show.
My favorite was like, apparently these people are majoring in cheekbones.
I mean, the one.
Look, the outfits are great and the dorm rooms are huge. You might as well go all the way with it.
Coco at the Pegasus party, you reading, here's an acceptable list of costumes for this, the whole, I mean, the casting is just so like phenomenal.
Thank you.
Phenomenal. I mean, from Brandon, who plays Troy.
Sure, yeah.
You don't know how many tweets I received like, dude, have you seen this brother?
No,
Yo, his body is like on point.
It's hilarious. I send all of the really embarrassing ones directly to Brandon just to make sure that he got it. Like I got this one from like in French. This woman did like a series of tweets thanking me and God, I guess, for putting him on screen. Yeah, I mean, listen, we have a fantastic casting director, Kim Coleman, but also like casting is kind of my favorite part. I have a semi-theater background, and so like picking the right collaborators for this story is really important to me. And like picking someone like Logan, who is not gonna just do the character, but like make it their own. Because at some point, this kind of, we start to co-create this thing. We are inspired by our actors and their stories just as much as I want to say something myself. And one thing that I was absolutely looking for is people who weren't gonna be intimidated by the actor that came before them, was gonna pay some homage to them, play the character that we created, but take it in a wholly new direction. And Logan was doing that from her tape, okay? Like, and the tape is like notoriously like, let's bring them in and let's see what they got, for real. I remember, I tell this story often because it really is true. I remember I was sitting like in a bathrobe or something, not to give you guys that visual, but like I was just sitting like going through, listen, that got dirty. Okay, just going through, the tapes of the day, getting ready to figure out what we're gonna do. And Logan's tape literally stopped my heart. It was just so right, and it was so powerful, and it was so different. And you were doing words from the movie. I mean, she was doing like Tessa's monologue that I, of course, knew by heart. All of Tessa's like ways of doing it, to the point where my boyfriend comes out of another room in the middle of something and says, "Who's that?" Yeah, I mean, it was really a moment. And each one of them, Antoinette, Duran, John Patrick, who stepped into the roles of another actor, they had that quality, and they also were great collaborators. Because at the end of the day, like, I don't want people to just sort of be mouthpieces for me. I want everyone to bring their heart and soul to these characters. That's the way to keep it real and keep it fresh.
Yes.
There's a real visual look to this show that I think feels like a carryover, an expansion of a lot of the things that you do in the film.
Sure.
But it's 10 episodes, and you directed 3 of them.
Yep.
But you've also got people like Barry Jenkins coming in, Nisha Ganatra, Tina Mabry, Charlie McDowell. How do you maintain that kind of look on a show when you're having to hand over the reins to other people?
Well, we had a lookbook, like most series, but we had a lot of conversations, and I brought people in who I felt had a cinematic sensibility. They weren't going to just sort of like follow the lookbook like a coloring book, but each episode comes from a different character's point of view. So, I told them all, like, don't feel shy about riffing and doing something a little bit different than what I did or what I might do, because you're telling a story from a new point of view now. Like, this is in the same world, but now I'm looking at it through Reggie's eyes. So that's gonna take on a different quality. Now I'm looking at it through Coco's eyes. That's gonna take on a different quality. So, I was always on set. We were always having conversations, and then, typically the creator of the show is very involved in the post. So, that's how. And also our amazing DP, Jeff Waldron, who is, kind of a genius in his own right, and obsessed with lighting black skin, and obsessed with sort of like, the look of the show. We worked together, and we weren't afraid to do things differently, but kind of keep the parameters of the world.
There were so many. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's something Oprah taught white people. That you have to light black skin a certain way. And now I always notice it. Like, I'll watch like on a show like Luke Cage or on certain films where I'm like, oh yeah, shit, that's like because when they do it wrong, now I'm like, okay,
it's very wrong.
You just see teeth. It's like, especially with a show like ours where we have so much melanin and so many different hues of people. That is not something we could have failed at. Like I would never have lived that down.
In addition to the visuals, the audio, the music of Dear White People. So I was talking to you off camera, but there's a song by Thelma Houston at the dance where Reggie. One of the best scenes in the show, in addition to everything else that's great in the show, was when when Lionel and Troy were dancing at the party. It was so relatable and such a feel-good moment, and that song was so perfect. And it was almost the type of happiness you feel that you just want to cry, because it's like you want that in your life, But the music is so phenomenal. You have original pieces as well as some throwback music on the soundtrack. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that song in particular, it was a moment in my life, as a lot of Lionel's, and honestly a lot of the show. It did really. I remember going to the writers' room and describing this moment where it was a bunch of sort of, crabby sitting on the wall people at this outdoor club on the east side. You can fill in the blanks. On a Saturday, it was a beer bus. The point is that this song comes on, and half of us knew the song but hadn't heard it in a while, and half of us had never heard the song before. But within minutes, I realized everyone was on their feet, and I genuinely felt like I was in Fame. Like everyone was just free for like this brief moment, and I held on to that for so long. And I was like, gosh, I have to give Lionel this moment. I have to find a way to give this kid who is so stuck in all the versions of himself he feels like he has to be, I have to give him this moment of freedom. And I couldn't explain it from a writer's standpoint. I couldn't justify it. I just knew we had to have that moment in the show, and it had to be that song. Because that song, I don't know why, but it's just infused with that kind of joy.
Right.
And Morgan Rhodes is our music supervisor. her playlists, just period, are brilliant. And it was a true collaboration because we're in the edit room. I'm kind of throwing things from my iPod. She's throwing us suggestions, and we just sort of get in there and figure it out. And that was one of the most fulfilling parts. And Chris Bowers, who is our composer, also had, Juilliard trained, jazz, classical background, but he's worked with Jay-Z. He's worked like in hip hop and pop music. He also is just pulling all of these different eclectic influences because, again, that's what it feels like to be black to me. It's like it's a combination of things. Like, my iPod doesn't just have one genre on it. It has a mix of things that most people would wonder, why are those things together? Why are you going from black or white to like, Nas to like classical music? Well, I don't know. That's what I like. And so the show had to reflect that.
It's kind of funny that there's not much jazz on the soundtrack, but you name all the buildings on the campus after jazz musicians.
Sure.
You got Armstrong Parker House and Bichette and all these other things. And I noticed that in the movie too, and it's sort of like, it seems, I'm assuming you're enough of a jazz fan to throw those references in, so I was wondering why we don't hear more of it.
Well, that's a good question. I would like to have more jazz in the show. I would. Okay. But I also, we also want to make sure that there's a balance between all the different sounds.
Sure.
And the parallel that I'm drawing between what was happening in what is still happening, but particularly in the past, what's happening in the jazz community is very similar to what's happening in the black community at Armstrong Parker, where like everyone has a different definition of what jazz is. Sure. And these people who I think most people think of, it's all the same thing. They had dragged down fights about, no, this is jazz and that's not. And I just thought that there was a nice parallel between that and my black characters. And so that combined with the fact that we very purposely wanted to create this sort of hyper reality that doesn't exist in real life, so that the satire and the comedy gives us a little bit of a distance from these issues. That just all kind of played into that.
Yeah. School Days had 2 soundtrack albums. That's all I'm saying. We gotta wrap up, but I want to hear what do you guys have next, and I'm hoping season 2 is one of those things.
Lugs.
Same. I would love to do film when we're not filming the show. That would be really fulfilling. And then I'm studying Shakespeare this summer. I'm going to Stratford-upon-Avon for like 3 weeks. And
that's great.
To the source.
I'm not theater trained, so I'm excited to just. It's not an acting class. It's literally just being in the town he grew up in and going to we're in London and Stratford-upon-Avon, going to the Globe, watching plays, reading. I'm just excited.
That is so
Do you
cool.
Instagram? I now suddenly want to see all your pictures.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, excellent.
So I'll be on there.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Hey, can we give an honorable mention to Sorbet?
Oh,
That's your cliffhanger.
will we find him? I don't know. It depends on Netflix.
That's why.
Not on my watch.
If for no other reason, that's why we have to have a season 2, because to know how it happened.
Where in the world is Sorbet?
Yeah. Listen, from your lips to God's ears, okay? They notoriously don't say this soon after, but I think the response has been really great, and I'm preparing mentally for a season 2, but like Logan, I want to do films, and I want to stretch and do something other than a straightforward comedy, and I have stuff in the works, and hopefully I'll get to talk about it soon.
Well, if there is no season 2, thank you so much for what you guys have given us.
It's just you. I'll never see you again.
No, Justin, Logan, I'll see you on Twitter, boo. No, but again, because it's been there's a lot of TV to watch. There's a lot of everything out there, and this show, like I said earlier, got so many things so right, and I'm so grateful for that.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
Appreciate that.
It's smart, it's funny, it's great. And so yeah, congratulations to both of you. This is terrific.
Guys.
Thanks you guys for watching, and seriously, Netflix, Dear White People, make it happen.